All right. We are live. Welcome. It is Monday. I can't believe it's October 17th. Where's our time gone? I'm Lydia Gable with Compass, and I'm excited to bring these community together broadcasts back. We have been off the air for a while as everybody has been so busy, but as everything has changed and is changing quickly, we think it's really important to bring these community shows back together again. And so we will be introducing them once a month. And I think for our first community together, some of the questions that we're getting, I've got a wonderful first guest with us. Brent George, who I've known for several years now, and he is an amazing bankruptcy attorney. He's been an attorney for over 27 years. He's got offices in Thousand Oaks and Oxnard. And Brent, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Lydia. It's great to be here.
Thank you. Anything you want to add about your little introduction? Your introduction. 27 years, two offices.
No,
Before we dive into some questions.
no, I just love the community of all of Ventura County. I represent clients from various sections of the community, all the way past Ventura towards Santa Barbara, as south as Oak Park, the San Fernando Valley. But I live in Ventura County. This is my area that I love.
Great. So LA County being Westlake, Calabasas,
Yeah.
we handle all of that. So I think that's
Yes.
important because our broadcast goes pretty broad.
Right.
So look, there's no question we're in a normalizing market or shifting market as far as real estate goes. There's a lot of inflation, interest rates are high, definitely starting to hear some layoffs. And some of the questions that come up that I thought would be so good is some people are starting to financially get into trouble. And I think some of the conversations that you and I have had was how can homeowner or an individual or a couple be a little preemptive before they have to file bankruptcy?
Yeah, it's essential in my opinion, to be preemptive. Is an individual who it might be struggling or might see that there are issues with debt on the horizon, would want to reach out to a bankruptcy professional like myself as early as possible to discuss the various options that might be available to that individual or that family, because there's a few different types of bankruptcies that can help those that are in need of help, and a lot of it depends on your income, the household expenses, and then the asset situation. And for most people, their primary asset, the biggest asset, is going to be their home. In a lot of cases, I should say, maybe not most people, but a lot of people, the equity that they have developed and established in their home, and that's the biggest concern. And depending on the type of bankruptcy that is sought, an individual needs to know upfront. Listen, this is how much. This is what you might lose if you have to do bankruptcy. You may have to give up personal property or real estate assets. It just depends on that individual situation. So that's part of the process for evaluating what the options are. Is getting their personal financial information and asset information. It's all critical to know, so people can know what's available to them and what may not be available.
So if somebody falls behind on their home payments, because that's normally their biggest payment,
Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
is there a rule of thumb on how many months they should go behind, or if they know they're going to fall behind, is there like a sweet spot that they should be contacting you?
Right away. As soon as they think they're going to have problems paying the mortgage, or even have issues paying unsecured debt. Obviously, the difference being credit cards, medical bills, loans without collateral. That's unsecured debt. People have to make those payments every month. And then you have your secured debts, like your car payments and your car loans, excuse me, for your home loans. And for a lot of people, they get into a situation where you have to pick and choose. You're typically going to pay your mortgage or your rent first, but we're talking mortgage specifically right now. And as soon as they find that they're in a situation though where they could fall behind on their credit card debts or their mortgage, that they want to call somebody like myself. The reason for the primary reason for if you fall behind on your credit card debts is if you end up getting sued by a creditor because you fell into default. They sue you. Sometimes they don't even notify you, even though that's against the law. Next thing you know, you have a judgment against you, and then the next thing you know, you have a lien on your property that came about out of you found out through a surprise. You don't want that to happen, so you want to look at your various options. And again, being proactive is critical, because when someone contacts me, one of the first things I'll have to tell them, or do tell them, is, look, I need documentation. And there's a fair amount of documentation. We're talking income statements, bank statements, list of expenses, tax returns. That stuff doesn't get accumulated overnight. So it takes some time, and that's the first step, and then get that information to me. But it all starts with a conversation. I like to find out what the specific details are for anyone who calls me. What's their situation? Are they married? Are they single? Do they rent? Do they have a mortgage? What are their asset situations? What's their income situation? All that information is critical, and but being proactive is the most critical thing, because you do that first. If you bury your head in the sand, there's a good chance you could miss out on opportunities. Strategy is a big component to bankruptcy. There's certain things that you need to know before you do them, that you shouldn't have done them. So that's important too. So it's all part and parcel with the services that I provide and bankruptcy attorneys provide, is guide people as to what they need to get us, what information to get us, and then eventually what their options are, so they can avoid problems.
So somebody calls you, they've lost their job, they're getting into trouble, or they can't make their payments, they've got equity in their home. What kind of strategy, what are the options before they then need to actually file for bankruptcy? What are some of the things you are able to help them with?
Well, if they're in a situation where they have equity in their home, and the problem is that they're not making ends meet when it comes to their unsecured debts, their monthly credit card payments or unsecured debts are substantial. If it is somebody that can qualify for a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, which is the most common type of bankruptcy, because it is the least expensive, the most efficient. Ultimately, in a Chapter 7, the individual debtor gets a discharge of all of his or her debt. And in most Chapter 7 cases, that individual or husband and wife or partners, they don't have to give up any of their assets. But a big part of that is utilizing the exemption statutes in California, and also federal exemption statutes, to be able to keep everything. You have to identify everything you own, and then you have to exempt them. And there are statutes that provide limits for how much you can keep of certain things, cash in the bank. But the best part is the law in California changed last year, or at the beginning of the year, in terms of how much equity a homeowner can still keep and file for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. And it's substantial. $600,000 is the maximum, and it's based on the median sale price in the county. So Ventura County would meet that median minimum. So $600,000 up to that much in equity, and still qualify for a Chapter 7. So if that's someone's situation where, like, they have several $100,000, but they don't have $600,000, and they know that they can keep their house, and they know that they can qualify, then the strategy at that point will be, okay, once my office has provided all the good, bad, and ugly about bankruptcy, so they can make the decision if they want to do it, say a Chapter 7, then if they're going to do it, then they make the decision that we're not going to pay those unsecured debts anymore. We're going to stop paying them for a period of time, because it takes these credit card companies and debt collectors months and months and months to get to the point where they're ready to file a lawsuit. So you've got time. And in the meantime, you're staying current on, let's face it, your most important investment is your home, particularly if you have equity, but the roof over your head. So you stay out of any trouble with your mortgage company by staying current if you have to pick and choose. But you don't, if there's a way you can avoid it, you don't want to go into default unless you know, I'm talking about on your unsecured debts, unless you know that bankruptcy, Chapter 7, is something that's available to you. If it's not, then once you go into default and stop making payments, you're on a road that isn't a good one. They will eventually sue you and they will get judgments against you. So we want to avoid that. So that's why the strategy component is again so important, and the being proactive is so important.
So a lot of people worry about their credit, right? They hear about bankruptcy and they hear about Chapter 7 and they go, I mean, obviously they're on this roller coaster
Yeah.
potentially anyway. They're falling behind. And, if you don't make your payments on your credit card 1 month or 2 months, your credit's going to get hit. So you're on a roller coaster anyway. But the question is, if they do qualify for a Chapter 7, what happens to their credit? Because now they can't get a new credit card and it'll take them a while to rebuild that credit.
Yeah.
What are they looking at on a Chapter 7?
So that's a great question. It's one that I get several times a week, and it's interesting. I think a lot of people are very surprised to find out that 12 months after a bankruptcy filing, the average credit score for a debtor will go up 100 to 150 points. Now, keep in mind that that individual that I'm referring to, the debtor who's pursuing bankruptcy, has seen his or her credit score drop to, sometimes 100 points or so, or maybe more, because they've gone into default. But within a year, because the debt is eliminated, it's no longer on their credit. As long as that individual does take proactive measures to, have credit post bankruptcy, and I'll explain why that's available, such as paying your car, your car payment. Obviously, that helps with your credit, and getting another credit card and using it and paying it on a regular, monthly basis helps to reestablish your credit. It's shocking for people to find out that, yeah, my credit score actually went up after bankruptcy. It takes about 12 months. The good news is, for those people who do want to have a credit card after they file, as soon as a bankruptcy is filed, they can start getting credit immediately, because what the bankruptcy filing does is it just wipes the slate clean as to any debts that existed at that time. And the person gets to start over. And the credit card companies are more than happy to offer these individuals and say, hey, we're going to help you out. Well, they're not that helpful, because there's a couple of reasons. Number one is the interest rate's going to be ridiculously high, problematic in and of itself. And then they know that individual that they're offering credit to can't file a Chapter 7 and wipe the debt out for another 8 years. So they want to, their goal is to maybe, let's get our hooks into this person again. So what my clients typically do is they'll get a credit card and they'll use the credit card, or they'll get end state. It helps with their credit, and they make payments and they don't fall behind. They don't incur those finance charges, or they get a secured credit card with their bank, which is just a matter of it gets secured up to an amount that you have in your account, so that you can't use any more than what's in your account, and it secures it. But that helps your credit score. So there are things you can do to help your credit score, and you do get to establish credit very quickly after a filing. It's an essential component of what people need to do, and as far as the question that I get a lot is, how long does a bankruptcy stay on a credit report? It's 7 years, but the negative aspect of it diminishes with every year, and your credit, and as I said, credit score continues to go up, and within a couple of years, a lot of my clients have very high credit scores as long as they followed the plan that we've talked about. and most of them do.
So if they don't qualify Chapter 7 and they have to go, the other one is Chapter 13. If you want to talk quickly about, if somebody, what's the difference and how do you make the decision between a 7 and a 13?
So a Chapter 13 is really designed for people that cannot do a Chapter 7. It's either because their income is too high and that they have what's considered disposable monthly income, meaning they have extra money left over, or even if they're not paying their credit cards anymore, they still have several $100s left over, that they would probably have to do a Chapter 13 and pay that for 5 years. Now, typically you're going to be paying a lot less than you owe, but that's one instance where someone would have to do a Chapter 13. Another instance where someone would have to do a Chapter 13 is if they have more assets than they would be able to keep in exempt in a Chapter 7. Say, for instance, somebody has a home with equity. That's great. We talked about how you get to exempt that. But say that somebody has a rental property that is not subject to, you don't get to include that within the exemptions, $600,000 exemptions. Those are specific to your residence. So let's say somebody has a rental home with some equity, or has a retirement account, not a retirement accounts are exempt, has some kind of a financial account, maybe stock account or mutual funds that are non-retirement, that is substantial. They would have to do a Chapter 13, which requires some skin in the game. It requires payments. But one of the great things about a Chapter 13 is that if somebody does fall behind on their mortgage, if they get to pay it back through a Chapter 13 plan, and a bankruptcy judge has tremendous powers and can tell the mortgage company. So let's say the mortgage company says, you're in arrears $20,000. You better pay us by next month, or we're going to start foreclosing. And you don't have the $20,000. What a Chapter 13 will allow is it will allow that individual to, in addition to continuing to pay the current mortgage that's required every month, to repay that $20,000 on a monthly basis over 60 months with minimal interest. But that individual has to be able to prove through income statements and expenses, and look, I can afford this. This is something that's doable to that individual. Again, it all comes down to the numbers. It all comes down to whether they can or can't do it, and documentation will prove it. And that's what I need to see more than anything else.
And what happens to your credit score and all of that on a Chapter 13?
Yeah, it's much more forgiving on a Chapter 13. It still stays on your record, but it's reported as a less severe type of a bankruptcy. A Chapter 13 really is a repayment plan. Now, most people are not paying 100%, but some people are, and it's a great tool. If an individual got into trouble because they had a period of unemployment or some COVID-related issues, lost a business, and incurred a lot of debt, that individual, if that individual or family is now making significant income such that a Chapter 7 is not available, they're basically going to be allowed to repay their creditors for 60 months, with minimal interest. It's basically 2% interest, and it's spread. And when you talk to a creditor and say, "Hey, help me out, will you let me repay this debt?" They'll never go that far out. They'll never go, "Yeah, take 60 months and pay us back whenever you feel like it." But the bankruptcy court will allow that. But again, if you don't have income currently to be able to do that, then it's not going to work for you. So it all depends. But it's a great tool available.
So as we finish this up, I can't help but say there's also the option that they should be meeting with you, but as a realtor, before somebody really gets into trouble, if they have equity in the home, potentially selling the home and renting for a period of time so that they don't need to file a Chapter 7 or go to the, because they probably won't have the income. With the market, the way the market has been, everybody has gotten equity in their home, and it is an option that we are talking to some of the people about is, let's take the equity, let's protect your equity if they have more than $600,000, and protect the equity and put you in a rental because short term, because then it doesn't affect your credit for, and we
Right.
can potentially buy in a couple years, right? If the market's shifting. So I think the important part, Brent, is what you're saying is be preemptive, be strategic. Don't put your head in the sand. Reach out to you because you're super helpful, knowledgeable, will guide them through, and have been nothing but super gracious with your time and helping. And is there anything in closing that you want to add or say to anybody who is potentially in financial distress, or anything you want to add?
Well, just to kind of reaffirm what we already discussed, it seems obvious, but when somebody's in the middle of a stressful situation, it's not so obvious. Your brain gets a little clouded, and if you're in a situation where you're worried about the future, you're worried about the present. Uh, it has to do with financial situation, has to do with debt and assets. Then you would call somebody like myself. Again, my consultations are, I don't charge for them because it's part of the process of determining what, if any, options are available. And in some cases, the conversation that I have with the client or the potential client, and they make the decision. I don't tell people what to do, I just guide them. But sometimes the best choice is to sell. If they either can't do a bankruptcy or don't want to do a bankruptcy, sell their property and rent for a while, wait this out, and be prepared. Be prepared to jump in at the right times. Sometimes that's the best option. Bankruptcy is not a great option. It's not the best option all the time, but I lay out the options, the alternatives. I answer the questions as to what happens if you do A, B, C, D, E, and then assist the client in making that decision.
I think that's where we can collaborate. We can work well together. And I think we just want the best thing for the client always. And I think that's super important. And
always number one.
Always number one. And that's how I've known you. And I think that's terrific. And I think, unfortunately, we might see more of that, and as we're moving forward, and that's why it's really good to be in front of it and to be as active as you are in the Conejo Valley. It's good that we have a resource like you. I love that we as a team can reach out to you and have a resource. And again, I thank you so much for joining us today. I think it's been super helpful. And if anybody's out there in need, please reach out to Brent. He's super
Absolutely.
helpful.
Absolutely. And thank you for all you do too, Lydia.
Of course.
Okay.
Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.